Chapter 2048, His Royal Highness 6. Feng Wu held the Empress Dowager's hand and nodded. Yes, of course. I'll train her well. The Empress Dowager said, Are you going to marry such a girl? You should cancel the marriage contract. Feng Wu chuckled inwardly but said obediently, Yes, of course. I'll do that later. The Empress Dowager caressed Feng Wu's hand and smiled. Good boy. I'm so happy to hear that. I'll find you a nice girl. Don't worry. I already have an eye on someone. Feng Wu knew whom she was referring to. Grandma. Feng Wu changed the subject. She pointed at Feng Sun and said, What's with all the flogging? The Empress Dowager nodded and told Emperor Wu, Your Majesty, it's a good thing that they all made it out alive. They all look exhausted. Let them go back and have some rest. We've been here for so long. I think we should head back tomorrow. Emperor Wu always listened to his mother. Since the Empress Dowager had said so, he nodded and said, All right. We'll set out tomorrow. The Junwo Empire team had gained a lot from the event this time. Most of the younger generation had risen 2 or 3 levels, and the death rate was very low. The grassland was the unlucky side. Not only had Ran Mill lost her cultivation, the other members hadn't improved much either. Chieftain Sino laughed. If your Majesty has decided to leave tomorrow, I'd like to invite you to a farewell banquet tonight. Emperor Wu wouldn't say no to that. I understand. They all dispersed and went back to their tents. Jun Linyuan stared at Feng Wu. Get over here. After that, he led Feng Wu into his tent. Granny Gong and Feng looked at each other in bewilderment. They looked at each other and felt that something wasn't right. But what was it? Feng watched Feng Wu's gait and frowned. Is there something wrong? Granny Gong frowned and asked. Feng said, Let's wait and see. Chaoga and Qiuling had a lot of things to tell Feng Wu, but they were both confused when they saw her going into the Crown Prince's tent. Just then were they seeing things? Did Feng Wu just command the Crown Prince? Since when was she so bold? They couldn't understand it. Something's not right, said someone behind them. Feng Sun? Chaoga stared at him. Although they had just been flogged, Feng Wu's medicine was so effective that they could already limp around. Do you find it strange too? Chaoga stared at Feng Sun. Feng Sun rubbed his chin. Of course it's strange. Boss Jun is so protective of Xiao Wu. He was never like that. This isn't good. Chaoga asked, Why? Isn't it good? Feng Sun said, But Xiao Wu specifically told me that Boss Jun isn't the one she likes. Boss Jun will be so disappointed. Chaoga asked, What do you want to do? Feng Sun said, I won't be a good friend if I don't tell him anything. Chaoga said, Feng Sun, I'm warning you, stay out of their business. You'll only create more trouble. Feng Sun looked at Chaoga but didn't say anything. Chapter 2049, His Royal Highness 7. Chaoga glared at him. Promise me that you won't interfere. Feng Sun scratched his head. He didn't want to, but he couldn't live with his conscience. Back in the tent, Jun Linyuan stared at Feng Wu and asked coldly, Are you happy now? Feng Wu looked at him innocently. What are you talking about? Jun Linyuan snorted. Kneel down and apologize to Her Majesty. Feng Wu chuckled, but she put on a straight face when she saw the way Jun Linyuan stared at her. However, she couldn't hide the smile in her eyes. Crossing his hands behind his back, Jun Linyuan glanced at Feng Wu and said, You're not allowed to leave my side. Feng Wu was about to retort, when she heard something at that moment. Dinged at the 9th trial had started. Got it? Jun Linyuan glared at Feng Wu. However, the voice didn't tell her what the task was. She then remembered something. Was it because the fairy was still with Jun Linyuan? Was that why she hadn't come out to announce the task yet? Hence, Feng Wu showed her palm to Jun Linyuan. The Crown Prince frowned. What? Feng Wu chuckled. There's a little thing in me. Can I have it back, please? Jun Linyuan frowned. Don't smile like that with my face. Feng Wu nodded and straightened her face. Jun Linyuan, please give it back to me now. She then gave a bow. The crown prince couldn't stand seeing himself behave that way, so he took the fairy out and tossed it to Feng Wu. Feng Wu was delighted to have the fairy back. Ninth trial. After the fairy woke up, she immediately climbed into Feng Wu's chest pocket and communicated with Feng Wu in her mind. Feng Wu said, "Tell me now." The fairy said, "You have to stay by Jun Linyuan's side all the time for a month." "What?" Feng Wu drew in her breath. "A month? That's so long. Wasn't there already a similar task before?" The fairy cleared her throat. "Well, you didn't switch bodies then, so that doesn't count." Feng Wu said, "Fine, that doesn't count, then. Tell me now. What do you mean by stay by his side all the time? How am I supposed to do that?" The fairy cleared her throat. "Don't be so serious. We can loosen the restriction a little." Feng Wu asked, "For instance?" The fairy said, "For instance, you can stay within 5 steps of him." Feng Wu said, "5 steps? How's that possible?" The fairy said, 10 steps then. That's the best I can do." Feng Wu said, "No." However, before Feng Wu could say another word, the fairy disappeared. Before she left, she said in Feng Wu's mind, "It's a deal, then. The trial starts now." Feng Wu looked frustrated. She didn't agree to this. "Feng Wu, are you listening to me?" After the conversation was over, Feng Wu saw Jun Linyuan's dark face. She asked, "What? What was that?" Frustrated, the crown prince turned to leave. "Stop right there." Feng Wu stared at Jun Linyuan and shouted. Jun Linyuan stopped and stared at Feng Wu. That was bold. The girl dared to yell at him now. Chapter 2050, His Royal Highness 8. Seeing that the crown prince was displeased, Feng Wu immediately put on a smile. "Well, we can talk about it, right? There's no need to get angry. What did you say? I should stay by your side. Right? Great." Feng Wu smacked the table. "How about we play a game?" Jun Linyuan raised his eyebrows and stared at Feng Wu in bewilderment. Feng Wu was crying inwardly, but she still put on a happy face. "Let's play a game where I have to stay with you all the time." Jun Linyuan gave her another confused look. Feng Wu cleared her throat. She didn't know how to bring it up, but she had already reached the 9th trial, and she couldn't give up now. Otherwise, all her efforts so far would be wasted. At that thought, Feng Wu gritted her teeth and said, "It's a really interesting game. We'll stay by each other's side for a month, and neither one can walk away from the other during this time. How's that?" Feng Wu stared nervously at Jun Linyuan. "Well, I don't mean it literally. We can be 10 steps from each other. How does that sound? It'll be fun." Jun Linyuan looked at Feng Wu with his brooding eyes, and the emotion in them was quite indescribable. Feng Wu's heart raced. What if Jun Linyuan said no? The chance of that happening was very high. Feng Wu knew that if it were her, she would definitely say no. Why would a man and a woman stay with each other all the time for a month? Therefore, she bit her lower lip and looked nervously at Jun Linyuan. The crown prince only glanced at Feng Wu before he turned to leave. Feng Wu grew uneasy. That lousy fairy! How could she start the trial so quickly? She didn't give Feng Wu any time to prepare at all. What if Jun Linyuan walked 10 steps away by accident? Hence, she immediately followed Jun Linyuan. Jun Linyuan stopped and grinned at Feng Wu. "Do you really like me that much?" Feng Wu looked perplexed. Jun Linyuan said, "That's a lousy excuse." Feng Wu said, "Well?" Crossing his hands behind him, Jun Linyuan glanced at Feng Wu. "Do you think I should give you the chance?" Feng Wu asked, "What chance?" Jun Linyuan said, "Stop pretending. Don't you think that you're overdoing it?" Feng Wu said, "Well?" Jun Linyuan said, "Since you're not all that sincere, my answer is no, you can't." Jun Linyuan turned to leave after that. And he counted in his head. 10, 9, 8, 7. He believed that Feng Wu loved him too much not to stop him. When he counted to 5, "Your Royal Highness," Feng Wu caught up with him and held his hand. "Let's talk. Why are you in such a rush?" Sit here with me. And there it was. The crown prince smiled a little. What do you want to talk about? He put on a serious and arrogant face. Feng Wu vented her sarcasm inwardly. Once she finished the trials, she would never talk to him again. I see that someone's angry, said the crown prince with a half-smile. Feng Wu immediately forced a smile. She then quickly poured Jun Linyuan some tea and said, Your Royal Highness, here, have some tea. Chapter 2051, His Royal Highness, 9. Holding the teacup, Jun Linyuan glanced at Feng Wu. Boss Jun, there's nothing wrong with this game, right? We can use it to train our resilience and tolerance. Don't you think so? A month isn't long at all. It'll be over before you know it. Feng Wu smiled and tried to persuade Jun Linyuan. I think I didn't sleep well. My shoulders ache. The crown prince stretched. That couldn't be any more obvious. Feng Wu was too smart not to catch it. So, she quickly ran up to Jun Linyuan and massaged his shoulders. She was an expert medicine refiner, and not many people could find acupoints as accurately as she could. Her massage was very comfortable. I feel so sleepy. Jun Linyuan rose to his feet and walked to the bed. Feng Wu immediately followed him, for she had to stay within 10 steps of him. The crown prince smiled in satisfaction. Feng Wu couldn't look any more frustrated. While Jun Linyuan went to sleep, Feng Wu had to sit by the bed. Jun Linyuan mumbled, If I'm happy enough, maybe I'll give you the chance. Feng Wu asked, What chance? The crown prince snorted. Feng Wu, there's no point in pretending anymore. Feng Wu asked, What? The crown prince smirked. If you make me happy, I'll give you the chance to like me. Feng Wu was screaming inwardly. Give me the chance to like you? Go to hell. But she didn't say anything. She needed his help, so she had to do what he wanted. She forced a smile. Really? Jun Linyuan said, Yes. I'll give you the honor of being in my presence. Feng Wu snorted inwardly. She didn't want it at all. But she still had to smile. Thank you, Your Royal Highness. The crown prince asked, Why are you thanking me? Have I promised you anything? Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Feng Wu wanted to punch Jun Linyuan when she saw how much he was enjoying this. Jun Linyuan snorted. Don't stop. Feng Wu sighed. All right. Poor Feng Wu. Since she needed Jun Linyuan's help now, she couldn't say no, and had to keep giving him a massage. And Jun Linyuan didn't wake up until that night. Someone knocked on the door. Feng Wu looked at the distance between the door and the bed. It was over 10 steps, so Feng Wu wasn't going to answer it. Boss Jun, it's me. It was Feng Sun's voice. Come in. With a flick of Feng Wu's fingers, the door opened. Don't stop, the half-asleep Jun Linyuan reminded Feng Wu. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Feng Sun was almost scared to death when he walked into the room. Feng Wu was lying on the bed facing away from the door, while Boss Jun was sitting by the bed and giving Feng Wu a leg massage. He was giving Feng Wu a leg massage. Feng Sun's eyes widened. He stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. Boss Jun. Feng Wu gestured at him. Be quiet. Feng Sun couldn't stand it anymore. Chapter 2052, His Royal Highness, 10. He had convinced himself that he would forget what Feng Wu had told him before, but seeing what Boss Jun was doing to himself, Feng Sun couldn't remain silent anymore. So, he walked up to Jun Linyuan and dragged him away. Feng Wu wasn't used to Jun Linyuan's spiritual essence yet and didn't dare use it freely, so Feng Sun was able to drag her a few steps away. She was almost 10 steps away from Jun Linyuan, and she was alarmed. Stop! She glared at Feng Sun. Pull yourself together. What are you doing? You look like the world is going to end. Feng Sun was frustrated by those words. Boss Jun, I can't bring myself to see you like this. Feng Sun stared at him. I just can't. Feng Wu asked, You can't? Feng Sun said, Boss Jun, you're forcing yourself to do this. It's not like you. Feng Wu was confused. Glancing at Feng Wu on the bed, Feng Sun took Jun Linyuan by the arm. Let's talk outside. Feng Wu realized that Feng Sun didn't want the other Feng Wus to hear what he was going to say. Feng Wu wanted to go outside, but she couldn't walk beyond that 10-step distance. Thus, she could only look at Feng Sun in resignation and say, "We can talk here." Feng Sun pointed at Feng Wu on the bed. Feng Wu said, "She's asleep. Don't worry." Feng Sun said, "All right. I need to tell you something." Feng Wu said, "Do tell." Feng Sun hesitated, then gave Feng Wu an apologetic look. He then turned to Feng Wu and said slowly, "Boss Jun, you should be worried, because Xiao Wu, she." Feng Wu was very curious. It seemed that Feng Sun was going to tell Jun Linyuan something behind her back. She was curious about what he was going to say. She didn't think that she had done anything worth blaming her for. Moreover, she knew that Jun Linyuan was awake right now. At that thought, she crossed her arms and said calmly, "Tell me, what about Feng Wu? What did she do?" Feng Sun scratched his head. "She didn't actually do anything. It's just that she told me herself that she doesn't like you. She's in love with someone else." Feng Wu glared at Feng Sun. He really was going to talk behind her back, but what he didn't know was that the boss Jun she was talking to was actually Feng Wu. Feng Wu snorted and stared at Feng Sun. "Do you think I care about that?" Feng Sun was confused. Boss Jun liked Feng Wu so much. Why should he care about that? On second thought, he realized how proud Boss Jun was. So be it. Right at that moment, there was a loud thump. They heard a noise from the bed. Feng Sun looked up and met Jun Linyuan's eyes. Holy crap! Those eyes! Feng Sun looked like he was about to cry when he turned to Boss Jun. "Didn't you say that Xiao Wu was asleep? She's going to kill me." He ran off after that. Feng Wu scratched her head and murmured, "Why is Feng Sun so afraid? He didn't say anything important." She then turned around and sat by the bed next to Jun Linyuan. Chapter 2053, His Royal Highness, 11. She was about to ask him about the game when she saw his dark face. There was no warmth in his eyes. Feng Wu felt her heart freeze. A chill ran down her spine. What's wrong? She realized that her voice was shaking. Jun Linyuan didn't say anything as he kept staring at her. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Feng Wu felt like crying. Her body was only that of a level 7 spiritual elder, and according to Jun Linyuan, it was severely injured. How could he radiate such intimidating energy? And his cheeks were scarlet red. Feng Wu wanted to speak, but she realized that she had upset him. "Jun Linyuan, you?" Feng Wu started to say something. Cough, cough. Jun Linyuan was caught in a fit of coughing and couldn't stop. Feng Wu immediately walked up to him and gently patted his back. She didn't realize how concerned she looked now. "Jun Linyuan, what's wrong? Why are you so angry? Please don't be mad." However, her words only made Jun Linyuan cough even harder. He pushed Feng Wu away. But he didn't have much strength, and Feng Wu quickly walked back to his side. Out! Blood oozed out of the corner of his mouth as he stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu said, "Why are you so angry? What's wrong with you?" Jun Linyuan said, "Get out, now." He pointed at the door and glared at Feng Wu with his eagle-like eyes. Feng Wu was confused. She didn't understand what had happened, but she couldn't go out now. Feng Wu fell back until she was 10 steps away from him. However, she felt that Jun Linyuan might roll to the other side of the bed, so she took a step forward. She sat down on the ground and spoke to Jun Linyuan in a serious tone. "I don't know why you're angry, but I know that it must have something to do with me. I'm not going anywhere. I'll sit right here." Jun Linyuan gritted his teeth and glared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu threw her hands up in the air. I'll just sit here and reflect on myself. I'll try to figure out why you're angry. Is that okay? Please don't make me go away." The look on Feng Wu's face was so adorable that Jun Linyuan snorted and turned his back to her. Out of sight, out of mind. Feng Wu secretly rejoiced. Luckily, she had expected the possibility that he would roll away from her, and had taken a step forward. Otherwise, she would have failed the task by now. At that thought, Feng Wu became a little worried. Although it was an unreasonable task, it had started, and Feng Wu would finish it at all costs. The problem now was that measuring the distance with her steps wasn't accurate enough. What if something went wrong? Feng Wu couldn't afford that mistake. So, the best way was a rope. She could find a rope and tie herself to Jun Linyuan. That way, as long as the rope wasn't removed, they would always be within 10 steps of each other. That was it. But to do that, Jun Linyuan had to agree to play that game with her. At that thought, Feng Wu was filled with complaints toward Feng Sun. Chapter 2054, His Royal Highness, 12. If Feng Sun hadn't intervened, Feng Wu knew that she would have coaxed Jun Linyuan into playing the game by now. But why was Jun Linyuan so angry? Sitting cross-legged on the ground, Feng Wu rested her chin on her right hand and was deep in thought. Jun Linyuan had clearly gotten angry after Feng Sun showed up. What did Feng Sun do? Nothing really. He only said one thing. He said that Feng Wu was in love with someone else. Was it possible that Jun Linyuan was angry because of that? Why should he be? If Jun Linyuan was really angry because of what Feng Sun said, it meant that he wanted Feng Wu to like him. The thought made Feng Wu jump to her feet. She wanted to question Jun Linyuan, but on second thought, she felt that even if Jun Linyuan wanted her to like him, it still wouldn't prove anything. People like Jun Linyuan were all very possessive. Everyone had to like him, regardless if he liked them or not. At that thought, Feng Wu pouted and stared at Jun Linyuan. The look in Jun Linyuan's eyes was still very cold. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. She didn't want to indulge him, but she still needed his help. But now, knock, knock, knock. Someone knocked on the door. Feng Wu's stomach lurched. Feng Sun hadn't come back, had he? She asked, "Who is it?" Granny Gong's voice rang out. "Your Royal Highness, the farewell banquet held by the chieftain is going to start soon. His Majesty has sent Master Gao to invite you." A farewell banquet? Jun Linyuan wasn't the type of person to attend such an event. "I'll decline the invitation if your Royal Highness doesn't want to go." Master Gao was on Jun Linyuan's side and always wanted what was best for him. From what he knew about the Crown Prince, the latter wouldn't be interested in such a banquet at all. Granny Gong thought the same. So did Feng Wu. She then said, "Tonight, the..." However, Jun Linyuan sat up before Feng Wu could finish. Feng Wu looked at him in confusion. Jun Linyuan walked past her without giving her a glance. He walked past Feng Wu in an arrogant manner. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. She couldn't calm down when she thought about the 9th trial. Without thinking, she followed Jun Linyuan and walked 3 steps behind him. They were very close. They walked out of the tent and Jun Linyuan suddenly stopped. He then turned to stare at Feng Wu. Feng Wu gave him an innocent look. Jun Linyuan said, "Don't follow me." He then quickly walked away. Feng Wu was exasperated. The 9th trial. She followed him without saying a word. Jun Linyuan walked faster and faster until he looked like he was flying. Feng Wu was right behind him, fearing that she would break the 10-step rule. She was determined that Jun Linyuan had to play that game with her, and she had to tie herself to Jun Linyuan. Otherwise, it would be too dangerous. "Can't you understand what I said?" Jun Linyuan halted, turned around, and stared at Feng Wu. Chapter 2055, Romantic Company, 1. Jun Linyuan stared at Feng Wu. "Didn't I tell you? Stop following me." Crossing her hands behind her back, Feng Wu looked around and said, "I'm not following you." Jun Linyuan smirked. "You're not? Then what are you doing now?" Feng Wu looked ahead and said, "I'm just savoring the view. I'm not following you." Jun Linyuan studied Feng Wu for about 3 seconds, but she just wouldn't meet his gaze. Jun Linyuan snorted and turned to walk away. As soon as he started walking, Feng Wu followed him. And she stopped when Jun Linyuan did. Jun Linyuan was speechless. "Feng Wu, do you find this amusing?" Jun Linyuan stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu shrugged. "What do you mean?" Jun Linyuan rolled his eyes at her. While the two of them bantered back and forth, the others were astonished. Especially Granny Gong. Since when did His Royal Highness become so clingy? Has he finally understood his feelings? Granny Gong murmured to herself. She then looked to Feng Sun for affirmation. Feng Sun smiled bitterly and shook his head. Seeing the suspicious look in Granny Gong's eyes, he could only say, "I'm just worried that His Royal Highness is becoming too sentimental." Granny Gong said, "What do you mean?" Feng Sun shook his head. "To be honest, I'm as baffled as you are." After that, he quickly walked toward Jun Linyuan and Feng Wu. Granny Gong turned to Feng. "What's young Lord Feng getting at?" Feng said, "It's hard to say." Granny Gong looked at Feng in confusion. She usually had a clear head, but not today. Why was everyone so hard to understand today? But Feng wasn't going to give her an explanation. In fact, Feng was only guessing himself. At the farewell banquet, the night wind on the grassland was quite cool. The seats were arranged in a circle. Emperor Wu was given the host seat. On his left was the chieftain, and the Empress Dowager was on his right. Empress Dugu was further down the line. Before, she would have been displeased with the arrangement, but when she offended the Empress Dowager last time, Mrs. Dugu, her sister-in-law, had given her a few lessons. Ever since then, Empress Dugu had learned to say things to make the Empress Dowager happy. And so far it had been quite effective. At least, the Empress Dowager didn't give her attitude whenever they met. Sometimes, when the old lady was happy, she could be quite nice to Empress Dugu. Jun Linyuan sat one seat further down next to Empress Dugu. Next to him was the second prince. As for Feng Wu, she was only a common princess, and was too far down to be seen. As before, Emperor Wu's people sat on the east side, while the people of the grassland sat on the west. The banquet had already started when Jun Linyuan and Feng Wu arrived. A bonfire was burning in the center of the banquet, and everyone was smiling. Jun Linyuan frowned. He didn't like events like this and had only come this way to frustrate Feng Wu. Chapter 2056, Romantic Company, 2. Therefore, Jun Linyuan immediately turned away from the crowd when he saw them. Of course, Feng Wu followed him because of her task. The two of them were going to walk away. But they had forgotten how eye-catching they were. When they showed up, the others were bound to notice them. Lord Mu was the first to spot them. "Your Royal Highness." He quickly walked toward Jun Linyuan. His voice immediately attracted everyone's attention. Even the people who had been dancing stopped and looked in Feng Wu's direction. "It's the Crown Prince of the Junwo Empire. He's so handsome. I hear that he's so powerful and has become a master cultivator at such a young age." Dugu Mingshi gave Jun Linyuan a jealous glance. He had thought that only women of the Junwo Empire would be infatuated with the Crown Prince. As it turned out, women of the grassland were the same. They were much louder, as if they were afraid that the Crown Prince couldn't hear them. Dugu Mingshi looked in the second prince's direction involuntarily. As expected, the second prince's face was darker than a cloudy sky. Dugu Mingshi sighed inwardly. Before the Crown Prince arrived, the second prince had been doing fine. He had engaged in a logical and cohesive debate with the older prince of the grassland. Everyone applauded him. The officials and teenagers of the grassland all sang his praises. But Dugu Mingshi wondered why His Royal Highness had to come. As soon as he arrived, everyone else fell to the background, as if they were transparent. Standing there, he looked like a landmark that towered above everyone else. No one was even comparable with him. Dugu Mingshi didn't know where to begin to vent his frustration. The Crown Prince was about as popular among men as Feng Wu was among women. Dugu Mingshi was glad to see the two of them leave, but Lord Mu had quickly run to their side. He wanted to pat Jun Linyuan on the shoulder, but then he recalled that the Crown Prince was a neat freak. Lord Mu's hand stopped halfway and turned into an inviting gesture. "Your Royal Highness, everyone's been waiting for you." Lord Mu was an extrovert, which was why Emperor Wu had made him in charge of the logistics. Jun Linyuan never compromised for anyone, and no one could affect him. Except for one person. He wanted to go, but he heard the Empress Dowager's voice at that moment. She arrived with Granny Lon and was asking, "Is Junjun here? Is that you, Junjun?" The Crown Prince was such a relentless and intimidating figure that it was so strange to hear someone calling him by his nickname. But if that someone was the Empress Dowager. The second prince's face had already darkened. Hearing the Empress Dowager's affectionate tone, he gritted his teeth. Chapter 2057, Romantic Company, 3. Seeing the Empress Dowager walking toward them, Feng Wu tugged Jun Linyuan's sleeve. Jun Linyuan threw her hand off. Feng Wu tugged his sleeve again. Jun Linyuan snorted. Seeing their interaction, Lord Mu had a strange look on his face. That wasn't right. According to Mu Yaoyao, the Crown Prince only treated Feng Wu as a toy and would forget about her as soon as he was done with her. But judging by what was happening now, she wasn't any toy. It looked like she was quite dear to him. They looked like a happy young couple. Feng Wu was giving Jun Linyuan attitude, but His Royal Highness was patiently appeasing the girl. He tugged at the girl's sleeve, and she brushed him off. He tugged her sleeve again. How patient. Lord Mu had been a teenager once, so of course, he could understand. They looked like all other loving young couples. He sighed inwardly. Mu Yaoyao, you little fool. Who are you trying to fool? His Royal Highness likes Feng Wu a lot. Despite his conflicted feelings, he had to smile. Feng Wu tugged at Jun Linyuan. Don't act like a baby. Her Majesty the Empress Dowager is here. Come with me. However, Jun Linyuan only glanced at her and turned to leave. Feng Wu was astonished. That left a bad impression on Lord Mu. He found Feng Wu so arrogant. Lord Mu stared at Feng Wu and was displeased. Who did this girl think she was? Unbelievable. However, at that moment an idea suddenly struck Feng Wu. She noticed the arrogance in Jun Linyuan's demeanor. Every time she tried to give Jun Linyuan an order, he didn't react well, but when she softened her tone, most of the time he would oblige. Was that true? If that was the case, it meant that she knew how to manipulate Jun Linyuan. That thought made Feng Wu rejoice. Of course, she didn't let anything show. She took Jun Linyuan's hand and spoke in a pitiful tone. Are you really leaving me? Hearing this, Jun Linyuan immediately softened and stopped walking. It really worked. Feng Wu was so excited that she almost wanted to dance. But could she control Jun Linyuan's temper now? Before, she only thought that she could bend Jun Linyuan's will in this way, but she didn't know that it could be so effective. Will you come with me? Feng Wu was playing the role of Jun Linyuan now, and she had been invited by both the Empress Dowager and Lord Mu. It would be so embarrassing if she left right now. Jun Linyuan gave Feng Wu a meaningful look. And he didn't try to leave again. Feng Wu was singing inwardly. She was so happy to have learned more about Jun Linyuan. By then, the Empress Dowager had reached Feng Wu, and everyone was looking in her direction. The Empress Dowager took Feng Wu's hand and said affectionately, Junjun, did you sleep well? Chapter 2058, Romantic Company, 4. Feng Wu immediately said, I'm well rested. Thank you, grandmother. You're always so formal. Why can't you be more casual around me? The Empress Dowager was happy to see Jun Linyuan and immediately took his hand. Sit with me. She then snorted. Someone was behaving like the smartest man in the room while you were away. He actually thought that he could win a debate. Feng Wu knew who she was talking about. Only the second prince would be criticized like this. The Empress Dowager then tried to lead Feng Wu away. She had no idea that the Jun Linyuan she was talking to was actually Feng Wu. Feng Wu sighed inwardly. She could go with the Empress Dowager, but what if Jun Linyuan wouldn't go with her? She was still on the 9th trial. Feng Wu looked eagerly at Jun Linyuan. She already knew him a little better than before. She knew that she couldn't talk to Jun Linyuan in a commanding tone, because he was a very rebellious teenager and thought that he was the greatest man on earth. Therefore, she had to try to bend his will by using tricks, such as talking in a softer tone. It would work much better than trying to force him. As expected, that when Feng Wu gave Jun Linyuan a pleading look, he snorted. Feng Wu then walked up to him and took his hand. Come, sit with us. She wished that she had a rope here to tie him to her waist. That way, she wouldn't have to worry about the 10-step distance anymore. The crown prince rolled his eyes at Feng Wu and reluctantly followed her. But now that the crowd was utterly baffled, the Empress Dowager was the most astonished because she was the closest to them. The two of them. How could her Junjun do this? Did they have no respect for her at all? The Empress Dowager's face darkened, but she couldn't bring herself to get mad at Jun Linyuan. Therefore, she lashed out at Feng Wu. The Empress Dowager's eyes were as sharp as blades as she stared at Feng Wu. But what she didn't know was that her dear grandson was actually Feng Wu. You frivolous girl. Behave yourself. And you. The Empress Dowager gave her grandson a frustrated glance. Have you forgotten where you are? Where do you think you're taking her? Feng Wu's stomach turned. Gosh, the Empress Dowager was angry. But Feng Wu then saw that the old lady was staring at her and Jun Linyuan's clasped hands. Was that it? The Empress Dowager glanced at Empress Dugu. If she wasn't there, the crown prince would be sitting next to the old lady. But seniority came first. Empress Dugu was still the crown prince's titular mother, and even the Empress Dowager couldn't make Empress Dugu change her seat. Therefore, she just gave Empress Dugu a dirty look before she pulled Feng Wu away. Here, sit next to me. Let's chat. The second prince had had a great debate just then, and had impressed a lot of people. Therefore, the Empress Dowager wanted to show Jun Linyuan some favor so that some people wouldn't get the wrong idea. However, Feng Wu didn't care about that at all. She was only trying to finish the 9th trial. Chapter 2059, Romantic Company, 5. Therefore, when the Empress Dowager wanted to make Feng Wu sit next to her, Feng Wu kept looking back at Jun Linyuan, fearing that he would be too far away from her. The Empress Dowager found that very frustrating. She pinched Feng Wu's waist and lowered her voice. Jun Linyuan, have you lost your mind? That hurt. Feng Wu was almost in tears, and looked at the Empress Dowager in confusion. The Empress Dowager said angrily, Look around you. You're a man, you should act like one. Women are disposable. I see that you can't get that girl out of your head. I can have her killed. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. She gave the Empress Dowager a strange look. If she really did that, she would kill her favorite grandson. Seeing how unperturbed Jun Linyuan looked, the Empress Dowager was even angrier. Jun Linyuan, are you trying to give me a heart attack? It seemed that she was genuinely angry now. Feng Wu looked over her shoulder to calculate the distance. If she sat next to the Empress Dowager and Jun Linyuan sat in the Crown Prince's seat, they wouldn't be over 10 steps apart. So, she decided to coax the old lady. And that was something she was good at. She took the Empress Dowager's hand, smiled, and said softly, Grandmother, you're an eagle who soars in the sky, and that girl is just an ant. An eagle would never let an ant bother her. The Empress Dowager seemed very pleased to hear that. Feng Wu went on. Grandmother, you're an adult, and she's just a kid. Why let her affect your mood? The Empress Dowager looked away. What if I let her affect me? Feng Wu sat down next to her and peeled an orange for her. Sure. Elderly people are just like children. In that sense, you're the same age as Feng Wu and even younger than me. Jun Linyuan probably didn't know what his grandmother liked to hear, but Feng Wu did. As expected, the Empress Dowager chuckled when she heard that. After that, the atmosphere seemed to lighten up a lot. However, the Empress Dowager wasn't going to forgive her grandson yet. Are you going to let the girl sit in your seat? The Empress Dowager stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu cleared her throat. Grandmother, what do you mean? The Empress Dowager said, Isn't she a princess? She has her own seat. Tell her to go back there. Feng Wu looked around. Where did the princesses sit? The seats were so far away, where she probably wouldn't be able to hear Jun Linyuan and the others talk. Feng Wu said, Grandmother, if you insist, I'll have to sit with her. You, the Empress Dowager stared at Feng Wu and was furious. Feng Wu smiled and held the Empress Dowager's hands. There, thither, Your Majesty, don't let her upset you. We'll ignore her. The Empress Dowager said, How can I? She's still sitting there. Does she think that she's the crown prince? Feng Wu cleared her throat. Other people saw it as well. And some wanted to create trouble more than others. They were just waiting for the Empress Dowager to finish criticizing Feng Wu. The second prince and Empress Dugu looked at each other, and both were pleased. Chapter 2060, Romantic Company, 6. The second prince and Empress Dugu looked at each other. They didn't expect that Jun Linyuan would become so foolish as to offend the Empress Dowager over a girl. Jun Linyuan was so proud and unapproachable that they thought he was going to quarrel with the Empress Dowager in public this time. Empress Dugu secretly rejoiced. Having spent years talking about Jun Linyuan behind his back, she had finally driven a wedge between the father and son. If Her Majesty the Empress Dowager abandoned Jun Linyuan as well, the second prince would have a much better chance. At that thought, Empress Dugu pricked up her ears and listened. But both she and other opponents of Jun Linyuan were disappointed. Jun Linyuan would never relent, but Feng Wu was much more flexible. Feng Wu took the Empress Dowager's hand with a smile and said, Of course. I'll tell her off when I go back. How about that? The Empress Dowager glanced at her grandson and asked, Why are you so docile today? Feng Wu's stomach lurched. Had the Empress Dowager noticed something? Meanwhile, Jun Linyuan couldn't help but glance at Feng Wu as well. He found the girl too naggy to sound like him. However, she had made the Empress Dowager very happy, so Jun Linyuan didn't say anything. He simply couldn't be bothered to do such things. Feng Wu smiled at the Empress Dowager. Grandmother, don't you like me this way? The Empress Dowager snorted. I hope you mean it. I know you too well. You're a little outlaw out there. What can I do when your own father can't do anything? Emperor Wu walked over to them, glanced at his son, and asked the Empress Dowager, Did Jun Linyuan upset you again? Of course not. Although the Empress Dowager scolded Jun Linyuan, she wouldn't let Emperor Wu say a harsh word to her grandson. Jun didn't do anything. Please don't tell him off. Emperor Wu rubbed his nose in embarrassment. Since the Empress Dowager had scolded him, he had to get back at his son for it. Therefore, Emperor Wu stared at Jun Linyuan with a dark face. Where have you been? Don't you know that there's a farewell party? Is this how you show your respect to the chieftain? Seeing that the Empress Dowager was going to retort, Empress Dugu rose from her seat and interjected with a smile, Your Majesty, please don't be mad. His Royal Highness must have had a tough time in the tombs, and it's only natural that he should need some more rest. We should be glad to see him. Emperor Wu said, He's not the only one who went into the tombs. Why is he the only one tired? Who does he think he is? He's not the emperor yet, and he's already behaving like one. That was a serious accusation. The second prince immediately interjected, Your Majesty, my brother is more capable and took more responsibility in the tombs. What hardship did he go through in the tombs? What responsibility? Tell me about it. Emperor Wu was genuinely angry. Seeing this, the Empress Dowager didn't know what to say. The second prince gave it some thought, and then smiled bitterly. Because my brother is much more capable than us, he didn't walk with us, so I really can't say. But he got Miss Feng Wu out, didn't he? Emperor Wu smirked. He didn't find the seed of the spirit source, nor did he save Wuxia. He only saved an outsider and won't acknowledge his faults. Jun Linyuan, you just won't repent, will you? Chapter 2061, Romantic Company, 7. Emperor Wu stared at Feng Wu. Do you still respect your father or not? Aren't they your brother and sister? Feng Wu looked at Emperor Wu in embarrassment. What was wrong with Emperor Wu? Had he forgotten where he was? The chieftain was still here. Why was he talking to Jun Linyuan like this in front of everyone? Emperor Wu stared at Jun Linyuan and said coldly, Answer me. Feng Wu had been about to make light of it at first, but now, she saw that she had to be more careful, since what she did might affect Jun Linyuan's position. She smiled and looked at Emperor Wu. "Your Majesty, am I not your son?" Emperor Wu snorted. Feng Wu chuckled. "Since I'm your son, I don't think you should ask me if they're my brother and sister. You should ask Her Majesty the Empress." Emperor Wu almost choked. "Jun Linyuan." Feng Wu smiled. "What happened in the tombs was quite complicated. Your Majesty, if you want, I can tell you in detail, but you may want me to shut up because what my brother did was quite humiliating." Emperor Wu glared at Jun Linyuan and was furious. The second prince's stomach lurched. He had done some cowardly things in the tombs and submitted to Ran Mill. That was something too shameful for him to admit. He gave Empress Dugu a meaningful look. Empress Dugu took the hint, walked to Emperor Wu, and held his arm. She then spoke in a soft, pleasant voice. "Your Majesty, you're a father to all your vassals, and I know you spoke to His Royal Highness in such a manner because he's your son. I'm sure he doesn't mind, but we're still at a banquet now." She then turned to Jun Linyuan and scolded him. "Your Royal Highness, you should know what His Majesty is like. You really need to apologize to your father now." Feng Wu wondered what Jun Linyuan would do in such a situation. At that thought, Feng Wu couldn't help but look at Jun Linyuan. But he was still happily eating grapes, and looked quite content now that someone else had to deal with his problem. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Knowing how stubborn Jun Linyuan was, the Empress Dowager wouldn't let him apologize. So she stepped forward and cast a stern look at Emperor Wu. "The banquet is about to start. Let's all go back to our seats and enjoy the farewell party." Just before the crowd scattered, Feng Wu sighed. "I remember when my mother was still alive. Back then, Your Majesty would never question me like this. Then my mother passed away, and Your Majesty had Empress Dugu. After that, Your Majesty hardly ever visited me anymore. I was never properly taught, and now, I'm accused of having a bad temper. Yes, it's all my fault. I shouldn't have grown up like this without my father around. I'm the only one to be blamed for this." The crowd was about to scatter, but they all turned to look at Jun Linyuan. The Crown Prince was never big on expressing his feelings. He was known for his great cultivation achievements. But now, he looked so lonely that one couldn't help but feel sorry for him. Chapter 2062, Romantic Company, 8. Everyone was imagining a 3-year-old boy abandoned on a street corner. The real Crown Prince had been eating grapes, and almost choked when he heard this. She was doing it on purpose. That girl absolutely said those things on purpose. That was why she had given him that look just then. As Jun Linyuan stared at Feng Wu, the others looked at her with different feelings. The Empress Dowager immediately broke into tears and went to hold Jun Linyuan's hand. "My child, you've been through so much," she sounded heartbroken. Because Jun Linyuan had never complained, when he showed a little emotion, other people would feel absolutely sorry for him. What the Empress Dowager said pretty much confirmed Feng Wu's earlier words. Empress Dugu blushed. The Empress Dowager's words made her sound like a horrible stepmother. Although she couldn't wait to get rid of Jun Linyuan, she would never. Everyone now looked at her suspiciously. Emperor Wu felt embarrassed as well. He glared at Jun Linyuan and said, "What you said?" But the Empress Dowager yelled at him and cut him off. "Be quiet. Are you still going to blame Junjun?" Emperor Wu rubbed his nose. "Mother, I'm just..." The Empress Dowager was infuriated. "You just what? You've only been listening to your wife ever since you married her, and started ignoring Junjun since the birth of your second son. You're no different than any other father out there. You've been turned into a stepfather by your new wife. And you won't even admit what you've done. Instead, you're trying to blame everything on Junjun. Your Majesty, you're the role model for all your vassals. You should be a just ruler, not a biased father. Am I right?" Emperor Wu could only nod. "Yes, of course." The Empress Dowager smirked. "As long as I'm around, some people had better keep their ambitions to themselves. If you keep trying to take things that aren't supposed to be yours, I'll cut your fingers off." Empress Dugu's face was scarlet red. Although the Empress Dowager didn't mention any names, everyone here knew whom she was referring to. Empress Dugu had been scolded by the Empress Dowager too many times to care, but what intimidated her was that Jun Linyuan had changed his tactic. Wasn't he supposed to be stubborn to a fault? Since when did he learn to vent his grievances? If he had learned to do that, the emperor might listen to him. After all, he was a remarkable young man. At that thought, Empress Dugu looked up at Emperor Wu. She was even more disappointed when she saw the sympathetic look on Emperor Wu's face. Mr. and Mrs. Dugu looked at each other, and their faces darkened as well. If they didn't do anything, Jun Linyuan would become their greatest obstacle. The atmosphere felt a little awkward. Just then, Chieftain Senal stepped out with a chuckle. "Your Majesty, would you like to enjoy a performance?" Everyone looked at him. Chapter 2063, Romantic Company, 9. Why would he speak up during an awkward moment like this? Chieftain Senal laughed. "Ranmil has just learned the ancient dance of Lulun. Your Majesty, would you like to see her performance?" Emperor Wu was very embarrassed and had been looking for a way out. He took the offer without hesitation. Of course, he said yes. He waved his hand and said, "Go ahead." "The ancient dance of Lulun? Is it the legendary one?" "Which one?" "Legend has it that Lulun has an amazing dance known as Fierce Face. It's supposed to be the hardest dance of the grassland and only exists in legends. It's extremely simple and about fierce conflict. At the same time, it also has a very gentle and feminine component. The dance is very demanding on the dancer's cultivation level and mental ability. The audience may feel enlightened and make a breakthrough. Do you think Princess Ranmil can do the Fierce Face dance?" "I don't think so. It's too demanding in so many aspects. If she hadn't lost her cultivation achievements, she may be able to do it, but she's only a spiritual grandmaster now. There's no way she can do that dance." "What a pity. If it really is Fierce Face, maybe we can make a breakthrough. If she can do it, she'll be such a treasure." "Do you know who was the first person to dance Fierce Face? Wasn't it Miss Yen Wu?" "Yes, she was later called Master Yen Wu. She had a real enchanting body. And she's the only one with that attribute so far, so stop hoping for impossible things." "An enchanting body?" Feng Sun asked Xian Yi in bewilderment. "What's that? Why haven't I heard of it before?" Xian Yi's answer was concise. "Sleep with her, and your cultivation will improve." Feng Sun asked, "Does that ability even exist?" Xian Yi rolled his eyes at him. "Only one such person existed in history, and she's passed away already." Feng Sun said, "That makes sense. Otherwise, hard-working cultivators would be discouraged. That wouldn't be fair. So, what are they talking about?" Xian Yi said, "They were discussing the dance the princess was going to perform." Feng Sun said, "That's ridiculous. How does the dance have anything to do with the enchanting body? I can't stand these people. That's just too easy. Plus, isn't it an inappropriate thing for a princess to do?" Just then they heard a man's voice. "Let's welcome Princess Ranmil for the Fierce Face dance." "What?" Everyone was astonished. "Fierce Face? It really is that dance." "That's impossible. She's been reduced to a spiritual grandmaster already." Just then Ranmil came out. Everyone stared at her in wonder. Her dress was semi-transparent, and it floated in the wind in an enchanting manner. But that wasn't what everyone was looking at. They were focusing on her cultivation. "Am I seeing this correctly?" Feng Sun rubbed his eyes. "She doesn't look like a spiritual grandmaster to me." Chapter 2064, Romantic Company, 10. Xian Yi had just been looking at Ranmil, but hearing what Feng Sun said, he noticed it as well. He then frowned. Emperor Wu noticed as well, and gave the chieftain a confused look. The chieftain chuckled. "Your Majesty, is it about my daughter's cultivation level?" Emperor Wu said, "Princess Ranmil doesn't look like a spiritual grandmaster to me. If I'm not mistaken, she's a spiritual lord again now." "Haha. The chieftain was so satisfied that he laughed. "Your Majesty, that's why my daughter insisted that she give us the fierce face dance. When everyone went back to get some rest just then, my daughter sat in the camp and cried. But as it turned out, it was a blessing in disguise. My girl's bad luck is finally over." She was suddenly enlightened and learned the meaning of the fierce face dance. After she finished dancing, she went back to being a spiritual lord. What? Everyone was astonished to hear that. Ran Mill had gotten her cultivation back. And it only took a dance to do it. Everyone looked at Ran Mill and felt as if she was glowing from head to toe. Ran Mill was back to the way she was and even more confident. Her lips were slightly parted, and her eyes were narrowed. She didn't look like the perfectly innocent girl anymore. Ran Mill looked past the crowd and met Feng Wu's eyes with a smirk on her face, as if to say, "Thanks to you, I know this dance now. Everyone is a blessing to me, from the people that have helped me to the person that tried to set me up. Isn't there a saying in the Junwo Empire that one can only make achievements through hardship? So, Miss Feng Wu, this dance is for you." Suddenly, Ran Mill turned to look at Emperor Wu and asked, "Your Majesty, would you like to make a bet with me?" "Really?" Emperor Wu chuckled. "What bet?" Ran Mill said, "If my fierce face dance can keep a person here, will your Majesty let that person stay?" "A person?" Ran Mill smiled. "It's a secret. Your Majesty will see. I just don't know if your Majesty will be willing to part with that person." With all the remarkable teenagers in the Junwo Empire, Emperor Wu felt that he could spare one, so he nodded and said, "Sure. If you have your eye on someone and he agrees to stay, I'll let him stay." "Thank you, Your Majesty," the chieftain chimed in. "Your Majesty, please keep your promise." Fearing that Emperor Wu would go back on his word, Ran Mill immediately started dancing. The others weren't interested in the bet. They just glanced at Feng Wu from time to time. They wondered what she was thinking now. Earlier, she had destroyed Ran Mill's cultivation in the tombs, but not only had Ran Mill returned to her cultivation level, she had also learned the fierce face dance. Chapter 2065, Romantic Company, 11. So, would Feng Wu feel regretful, get angry, or be scared? Everyone tried to find those emotions on Feng Wu's face, but it was impossible. The person using that body now was Jun Linyuan. The crown prince sat there and ate his meal as if everything happening around them had nothing to do with him. He would glance at Feng Wu from time to time and wonder why the girl was still chatting happily with the Empress Dowager. One had to admit that Ran Mill's fierce face was indeed an incredible dance. Halfway through, there was a buzzing sound in the crowd, and someone made a breakthrough. It was none other than Dugamingshi. "I've made a breakthrough, but I didn't do anything." He was thrilled. Immediately, all eyes were on Dugamingshi. Dugamingshi was glad to make a breakthrough, but he was even happier to do things that could upset Feng Wu. So, he decided to praise Ran Mill. His cheeks were flushed with excitement, and he feigned a confused look as he looked around. "I really didn't do anything. I was just watching the dance. Why did this happen?" "Dugamingshi, sit down. Stop showing off. We haven't sensed anything yet. Sit down, or we may lose the opportunity." The others were eager to watch the dance, and interrupted Dugamingshi. Dugamingshi gave Feng Wu the provoking glance. Just then, someone else made a breakthrough as well. The crowd was excited again. At first, Fierce Face struck the audience as the most innocent dance, and Ran Mill looked like a fairy in the moonlight. But halfway through, the dance became fierce, and the drumbeat was deafening. Because of that, the audience grew excited and was lost in the dance. In the second half, Ran Mill began to take off her clothes, and the remaining pieces were almost see-through. As she danced, she moved closer and closer to Jun Linyuan, who was, in fact, Feng Wu. Feng Wu had been sitting with the Empress Dowager, but Jun Linyuan kept giving her dirty looks, so she made an excuse and went to sit with him. For that, the Empress Dowager kept glaring at Jun Linyuan. Ran Mill had no idea that the person she was trying to seduce was a girl as well. Because of that, she tried her best to give Feng Wu alluring looks. That was an element of fierce face and the most important part of the second half of the dance. Ran Mil had only mastered that alluring look this afternoon. She kept winking at Jun Linyuan now. In fact, the crown prince was Ran Mil's real target tonight. She had had her eye on him before she learned the dance. And now, she had finally learned it. Moreover, she had one more card up her sleeve. Chapter 2066, Romantic Company, 12. Every man was enthralled by the dance. Ran Mil moved closer to Feng Wu. Suddenly, she slipped and fell into Feng Wu's arms. Feng Wu was astonished. Jun Linyuan stared at her. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Before Feng Wu could react, Ran Mil had risen to her feet and moved away, as if what happened was only part of the dance. Feng Wu smelled her sleeve and noticed a unique scent. She smiled a little. The music stopped. Only then did the crowd come back to themselves and look at Ran Mil in excitement. Bravo! What a wonderful dance! Amazing! Princess Ran Mil is so beautiful. Everyone was praising Ran Mil, but she didn't care about any of them. Her gaze was on Jun Linyuan the whole time, and his opinion was the only thing she cared about. But each gave no reaction, which made Ran Mil uneasy. But she was used to taking the initiative, so she turned to Emperor Wu with a confident smile. Your Majesty, does our bet still count? Emperor Wu smiled. Of course it still counts. Now, which young man do you want to keep? Ran Mil's fierce face would benefit whichever man she wanted to keep. Every young man looked eagerly at Ran Mil. Pick me. She was beautiful and respectable, and she might dance fierce face for her man from time to time. All the teenagers looked forward to being picked. Ran Mil looked past the crowd and fixed her gaze on Feng Wu. She then smiled. Your Royal Highness, do you want to stay here with me? What? Everyone gave Ran Mil strange looks. That was bold. Jun Linyuan was the crown prince of the empire and the future emperor. Did she really think that he would stay behind for her? Although Ran Mil was beautiful, she was still asking too much. Everyone shook their heads. That was never going to happen. Emperor Wu was surprised by that request as well. How could the princess choose Jun Linyuan? Feng Wu looked from Ran Mil to Jun Linyuan. She asked him with her eyes, do you want her? The crown prince glared at Feng Wu. He was very angry. Feng Wu cringed and took the hint. But other people had a different understanding of their interaction. Emperor Wu and the Empress Dowager saw that Feng Wu was staring at the crown prince and threatening him, and they were astonished. The Empress Dowager gritted her teeth. Jun has spoiled that girl. This is outrageous. Granny Lan smiled bitterly. Your Majesty, please don't be mad. The Empress Dowager said, of course I'm angry. I've never raised my voice at Jun, but that girl is staring at him. Granny Lan said, Your Majesty, everyone has their own preference, and His Royal Highness. Chapter 2067, Romantic Company, 13. The Empress Dowager said, No. I won't allow it. I must break this girl. She must be tamed even if I have to break all her bones. Granny Lan sighed inwardly. No one paid much attention to their conversation. All eyes were on Jun Linyuan now. How would he respond to Ran Mil's invitation? Feng Wu looked at Ran Mil and smiled. The crown prince was smiling. Wasn't he supposed to be a cold, unapproachable man? Why was he smiling at Ran Mil now? The crowd suddenly wasn't sure what he would say. Ran Mil hadn't had much hope either, but she found a little now. Maybe it could actually happen. But what Feng Wu said next shattered all her hopes. I decline. She didn't even address Ran Mil when she turned her down. Great. Many girls from the Junwo Empire clenched their fists in excitement. The crown prince belonged to the empire and was going to be the future emperor. Why would he stay in the grasslands to be Ran Mil's husband? But Ran Mil wasn't very disappointed, because she hadn't had much hope in the first place. She smiled and said, Since your Royal Highness won't stay here for me, then? All eyes were on her. She smiled brightly. Then, will your Royal Highness take me with you? Wow, everyone stared at her. They had heard that Ranmil liked the crown prince and wanted to marry him, but they had never heard someone make such a straightforward request. Many girls gritted their teeth and glared at Ranmil. How shameless! How could this woman say such a thing? Since everyone believed that Feng Wu was only the crown prince's maid, the girls could persuade themselves that the crown prince would eventually dump Feng Wu. But Ranmil was a princess of the grasslands, so the crown prince would have to make her an official member of his household. Feng Wu stared at Ranmil. For some unknown reason, she felt suffocated, as if someone was trying to steal what was hers away. She didn't like it. The crowd saw that Jun Linyuan was deep in thought and began to speculate. Did His Royal Highness want to take Ranmil with him? Did His Royal Highness like Ranmil? Could it be? Feng Sang and the others all looked at Jun Linyuan nervously. Although they had all told themselves many times that they had to stop this delusion, they couldn't help it. Feng Wu didn't understand herself either. His Royal Highness was considering it. Ranmil was thrilled. His Royal Highness was patting his chest. He must be very serious about it. Chapter 2068, Romantic Company, 14. Ranmil believed that she had a good chance. Meanwhile, the crown prince stared at Feng Wu. Hey! Yes. Right. Feng Wu immediately woke up from her reverie and looked at Ranmil. What did you say? Well, everyone looked at the crown prince and was speechless. Ranmil had just confessed her love for him, but his attitude was such a humiliation to her. Ranmil paled a little. Feng Wu couldn't make the decision for Jun Linyuan, so she asked him, what do you think? Wow. The crown prince had just asked Feng Wu for her opinion. What did that mean? A short distance away, Master Dugu and Master Zhou looked at each other. They wondered if the crown prince was so displeased with Ranmil, or was it they who had failed to realize how important Feng Wu was to the crown prince? In a moment like this, he shouldn't be asking the opinion of a maid. Jun Linyuan snorted. Feng Wu asked, do you want to take her or not? The crown prince snorted. Feng Wu said, so, should I take her back to the imperial capital? Jun Linyuan glared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu said, so, I'll turn her down. Jun Linyuan said grumpily, it's your decision. Don't ask me. Feng Wu rubbed her forehead and wondered why the crown prince wouldn't make such a big decision himself. But it was enough to show that he didn't like Ranmil at all. So, Feng Wu shook her head. When she was about to say no, Ranmil said something else. I have an enchanting body. Those words sounded like a thunderclap in everyone's ears. The enchanting body? Seriously? Princess Ranmil has an enchanting body. Gosh, that's such a treasure. But not everyone knew what that was. Feng Wu, for one, didn't. Thus, the people who knew showed off their knowledge. No wonder Princess Ranmil can learn the fierce face dance. She's like a living Miss Yen Wu. Come to think of it, she's not the reincarnation of Master Yen Wu, is she? Get to the point. What's an enchanting body? To put it in simple terms, if a man takes a woman with that attribute, every time they sleep together, he'll become a little stronger. So, that is to say, he doesn't need to do anything and can enhance his power just like that. Yes. Holy shit! Earlier, they didn't think that the crown prince would take Ranmil, but now, they found it very possible. How could a girl with the enchanting body wander around? She had to join the royal household. The crown prince would have to be out of his mind to not accept the princess of the grassland. After hearing that explanation, Feng Wu felt a little crestfallen. She gave Jun Linyuan a glance and looked away. A moment later, she stole a glance at him again. After Ranmil mentioned her enchanting body, the crown prince remained unperturbed. His face was as emotionless as ever. But Ranmil was very confident in herself. That was the last card up her sleeve. She didn't believe that any man could resist that temptation. Chapter 2069, Romantic Company, 15. Jun Linyuan glanced at Feng Wu and asked her in return, what do you think? Feng Wu said, "How am I supposed to know?" The crown prince had just been appeased, but his face darkened, and he narrowed his eyes. There was a warning look in them. "You don't know." Feng Wu was almost in tears. "How am I supposed to know? She has that legendary enchanting body. All men are supposed to want her." The crown prince snorted but didn't say anything. Feng Wu didn't know what the man wanted. At the same time, Chieftain Sino rubbed his chin and smiled at Emperor Wu. Emperor Wu was also pleasantly surprised. "The enchanting body? The princess really has that?" Emperor Wu cried out. Both Empress Dugu and the second prince looked at her eagerly. The second prince wanted Ran Mil as well. He wouldn't be so excited if Ran Mil was only a pretty and smart girl, but now he wanted to get stronger more than anything else. Only with enough power would he feel that he had enough dignity to face Jun Linyuan. The second prince gave Empress Dugu a pleading look. He wanted Ran Mil. Empress Dugu shook her head at the second prince, hinting that he should wait patiently while she tried to find a way. The Empress Dowager didn't like Ran Mil. She didn't like any girl that tried to throw themselves at her Junjun. But that the girl could help men to cultivate even in bed. The Empress Dowager took Granny Lan's hand and said, "Junjun has gone through so much for his cultivation. If he marries this Ran Mil, will life become easier for him?" Granny Lan didn't really understand this type of thing, but she still said, "I think so, since everyone is so excited." The Empress Dowager clenched her fists. "In that case, we'll take that Ran Mil." Granny Lan immediately said, "Your Majesty, please wait." The Empress Dowager looked at Granny Lan in confusion. Granny Lan smiled wryly. "Your Majesty, after so many years, do you still not know what His Royal Highness is like?" The Empress Dowager asked, "What do you mean?" Granny Lan said, "His Royal Highness is a very proud man and will never be forced into doing something. He only takes what he wants. No matter how suitable a girl is, if she throws herself at him, he'll never take her." The Empress Dowager realized that was indeed the case. But didn't Feng Wu throw herself at him? Granny Lan lowered her voice and said, "Your Majesty, if you can put away your prejudice, do you really think that Miss Feng Wu is throwing herself at His Royal Highness, or is it that His Royal Highness won't let her get away?" The Empress Dowager was angry and stared at Granny Lan. Granny Lan immediately lowered her head. The Empress Dowager then turned to look at Jun Linyuan and Feng Wu. Although she hated to admit it, she had to admit that Granny Lan was right. The Crown Prince seemed to be the more eager one. But it only made her angrier. But why? Her Junjun was so talented and powerful. Why did he fall for such a girl? "I won't have it." The Empress Dowager stared at Granny Lan. "After we get back, write a letter to Firmament Palace and tell the daughter of the Zhou family to come back to the imperial capital." Chapter 2070, Romantic Company, 16. Granny Lan gave the Empress Dowager a look of resignation. "Understood," the Empress Dowager said in a threatening tone. Granny Lan said, "Yes, Your Majesty." Ran Mil put her hands behind her back, raised her chin, and looked at Jun Linyuan confidently. "Your Royal Highness, will you take me to the imperial capital?" She then gave Feng Wu a provoking look. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. She wondered if Ran Mil had a death wish. She had just tried to provoke Jun Linyuan. Jun Linyuan stared at Feng Wu with a threatening look in his eyes. Yes. It was obviously a threatening look. Alarmed, Ran Mil gave Feng Wu an even colder look. Feng Wu didn't know what to do. It was supposed to be Jun Linyuan's problem, but she had to take care of it now. What an irresponsible man. Feng Wu snorted and told Ran Mil, "No. I won't." Wow. That was an outright refusal. There was nothing tactful about it. It was a straightforward no. Wu Shtad, instead of looking at Jun Linyuan or Ran Mil, everyone looked at Feng Wu. Especially the Zhou family and the Dugger family, who held grudges against Feng Wu. They all stared at her in disbelief. No. This couldn't be happening. Before, although the Crown Prince would take Feng Wu everywhere, he pretty much ignored her and wouldn't say anything to defend her, But things had changed after they returned from the tombs. His Royal Highness had changed. Not only was he on Feng Wu's side, he also doted on her. He was the peerless crown prince. Many girls were heartbroken. The Zhou family and the Dugu family were filled with despair. Especially the Zhou family. They had suffered a great loss this time. Both Zhou Qingyu and Zhou Qingxian were dead, and their parents blamed Feng Wu for everything. They seemed to have ignored Feng Wu until then, as if they had forgotten about their old grudges, but that was only because Feng Wu was already a dead person to them. But things had changed. Feng Wu alone was easy to handle, but if the crown prince was involved, things would become very complicated. Master Zhu's face was very dark. He wasn't alone. Many people didn't look much better. Ranmil's face was livid. She clenched her fists and felt humiliated. That refusal had shattered her pride. All the eyes that were looking at her seemed to be filled with sneers and taunts, as if everyone was laughing at her. Had it been before, she would have cried and run away. But not today. Ranmil fought back the shame. She couldn't leave now. If she did, she would have to live with the shame forever. Therefore did she force a smile. Your Royal Highness might have misunderstood me. Ranmil smiled. I hear that Miss Zhou Qingwan is your Royal Highness's true love and the most suitable wife. As she spoke, she gave Feng Wu another taunting look. Chapter 2071, Romantic Company, 17. She then stared at Feng Wu and said, Therefore, I know I can't become your Royal Highness's future wife. I just want to be by your side, even if I'm just a maid or a slave. Your Royal Highness, please have some pity on me. She then knelt down. Gosh! Everyone watched this in disbelief. Ranmil was willing to do that. Even the chieftain was astonished. He stared at Ranmil. With her enchanting body, only kings and emperors would be good enough to marry her, but although Jun Linyuan was the crown prince, Ranmil had just asked to be his maid or slave. Ranmil, the chieftain narrowed his eyes. Apparently, Ranmil hadn't told anyone about this. Everyone stared at Jun Linyuan in astonishment. Feng Wu was dumbfounded as well. She had no idea that Ranmil would be so stubborn. She was fixated on Jun Linyuan, like a dog holding on to a piece of meat. She would even abandon her pride as a princess. Feng Wu herself would never do such a thing, no matter how much she loved a man. She shook her head and shrugged at Jun Linyuan. What now? His Royal Highness was asking Fort Feng Wu's opinion. The crowd was once more astonished. Why was this happening? That enchanting body was a one-of-a-kind thing in the entire continent. Every man would love to sleep with her. But His Royal Highness was completely indifferent. Jun Linyuan looked back at Feng Wu with a threatening look in his eyes. Don't you know what to do? Feng Wu was crying inwardly as she shook her head at Jun Linyuan. It's your call. Jun Linyuan said, No, it's yours. Feng Wu said, If I make the choice, you better not regret it later. The crown prince smiled a little. If your choice displeases me, you'll be the one to regret it. Feng Wu said, Be reasonable, okay? Jun Linyuan said, No, I won't. Bite me. Feng Wu was astonished. The crown prince was very pleased to win the quarrel. Feng Wu knew what Jun Linyuan meant. He was such a proud person that he would never let people think that he had gained his cultivation achievements by sleeping with a woman. That would be such a humiliation. Therefore, Ranmil had lost the battle when she tried to use herself as a prize. But Feng Wu still found Ranmil very annoying. Even if she turned her down now, she could keep coming back. It was best for her to find a way to solve this problem once and for all. An idea suddenly struck her. She looked at Ranmil and said, Did you just say that you would become a slave or a maid just to be around me? Ranmil was relieved to hear that. It seemed that the reason the crown prince hadn't chosen her was because of Zhou Qingwan. Zhou Qingwan? Although she was known to be a genius, Ranmil wasn't intimidated. Chapter 2072, Romantic Company, 18. She was very confident that once the crown prince slept with her and had a taste of her great body, He wouldn't want any other woman. So what if she started off as a maid? Eventually, she would become Jun Linyuan's only wife. Therefore, Ran Mil said solemnly, "Yes, that's what I said." Feng Wu nodded. "I'm a suspicious person by nature. So, if you want to serve me..." She glanced at Feng. Given how smart Feng was, he immediately took the hint. He stepped forward and brought out pen, ink, and paper for Ran Mil. The others were all confused. What did His Royal Highness want to do? When Ran Mil saw what was written on the paper, she stared at Jun Linyuan in disbelief. The chieftain realized that something was wrong, so he walked over to them and picked up the piece of paper. His face went scarlet red. His hands were shaking, and when he looked at Jun Linyuan, his eyes seemed to spit fire. "This is outrageous." He glared at Jun Linyuan. "Your Royal Highness, this is a humiliation." Feng Wu remained indifferent. It had been Jun Linyuan's idea, not hers. So, when the chieftain was angry, he was angry at Jun Linyuan, not her. Seeing that the crown prince showed no sign of changing his mind, the chieftain was furious. He quickly walked up to Emperor Wu and showed him the piece of paper. "Your Majesty, please have a look." Many people craned their necks, trying to see what was written on it. Emperor Wu took one look, and his eyes widened. "Jun Linyuan." He glared at his son. "How dare you?" Feng Wu felt the formidable energy of the emperor. Luckily, she was using Jun Linyuan's body now. Her own would have been crushed immediately. Feng Wu looked at Emperor Wu in confusion. Emperor Wu said, "How dare you ask Princess Ran Mil to sign this slave contract?" "What? A slave contract? For Princess Ran Mil?" That was indeed such a humiliation. Ran Mil remained kneeling on the ground and looking docile. She had had everything planned out, but the last thing she expected was this contract. The maid or slaved thing was only an excuse. She hadn't meant a word. Whoosh! All eyes were on Feng Wu. Everyone discussed it among themselves. Before, Princess Ran Mil may have agreed to be His Royal Highness's maid, but she has an enchanting body now. That's a unique thing on this continent. Making her a maid is so... What will Princess Ran Mil do? Will she sign it? Everyone hesitated. She had to choose between a position next to the crown prince and losing her dignity. "Father, please give it to me." Ran Mil gestured to the chieftain. Her father stared at her in disbelief. Chapter 2073, Romantic Company, 19. Ran Mil. "Father, please hand me the contract." Ran Mil calmly rose to her feet. She didn't look like someone who had just been humiliated. Feng Wu couldn't help but glance at her. How interesting. Feng Wu had thought that Ran Mil would never swallow the humiliation. However, not only did she take it, she did so with great composure. For that, Feng Wu was impressed. Emperor Wu glared at Jun Linyuan. "That's enough." Feng Wu shrugged. "Whatever you say, Your Majesty." She meant that she wouldn't take Ran Mil anymore. Emperor Wu almost fainted. The chieftain gaped when he watched their interaction. Where was Emperor Wu's authority when he was with his son? The people of the Junwo Empire, on the other hand, were used to this, and didn't even raise their eyebrows. Without another word, Ran Mil took the pen and ink from Feng and the contract from her father. With 2 strokes, she signed her name. She gloated inwardly. So what if she was going to become a maid? Yes, she had to start from scratch, but she had an enchanting body. What was there to be afraid of? Legend was that the first Empress consort of the Junwo Empire also started off as a maid working in the imperial palace. Therefore, she wasn't worried at all. Feng gave her an indescribable look before giving the contract to Feng Wu. Feng Wu checked the signature. It was indeed Ran Mil's name. "Your Royal Highness, I'm yours now." Ran Mil walked up to Feng Wu and looked eagerly at her. Feng Wu almost jumped. The meaning of that look was too apparent. Feng Wu looked at Jun Linyuan. Jun Linyuan shrugged and played the happy onlooker. Feng Wu stared at him and didn't like his attitude. She decided to let him solve his own problem. She then stuffed the contract into Jun Linyuan's hands. She was only throwing the ball back at Jun Linyuan, but in the eyes of the crowd and Ranmil, it was a very big deal. Your Royal Highness. Ranmil gritted her teeth and looked at Feng Wu. Feng Wu snorted. What? You got a problem? Ranmil gritted her teeth and fought back her anger. She forced a smile and said, I know I arrived later than Miss Feng Wu. She has served your Royal Highness for a while, so it's only natural that she's my superior. I have no objection at all. How docile. However, Feng Wu didn't like her choice of words, which sounded like Feng Wu really was Jun Linyuan's maid. She wouldn't have it. Normally, Feng Wu couldn't do anything about it, but she was Jun Linyuan now, and she had the authority. Therefore, she put on a straight face and cast a stern look at Ranmil. What did you say? Ranmil was confused. Had she said something wrong? Feng Wu flipped her sleeve and smirked. Miss Feng Wu isn't my maid. Chapter 2074, Romantic Company, 20. The others didn't seem surprised. Since the Crown Prince cared for Miss Feng Wu so much, of course she wasn't considered a maid. Ranmil didn't realize that, so she gritted her teeth and asked, Your Royal Highness, do you mean to marry her? No way. Feng Wu wanted to smack Ranmil on the head. There was nothing between her and Jun Linyuan. They were strictly partners for a task. Although, Jun Linyuan didn't know that yet. Feng Wu stared at Ranmil and smirked. You ask too many questions as a maid. I don't want you around me. Feng Wu glanced at Jun Linyuan and raised her chin. You can do whatever you want with her. She's yours. That actually made sense. Since Ranmil wanted Jun Linyuan, Feng Wu decided to give Ranmil to him. But the crowd found it unacceptable. Ranmil was a princess. How could she be gifted away like a real maid? Why wouldn't Ranmil leave? To their disappointment, Ranmil still stood there. She bit her lower lip and showed no sign of leaving. Jun Linyuan took the contract and frowned. Just then, Feng Sun came out of nowhere. He patted Jun Linyuan's shoulder and said, Hey, Xiao Wu, are you so happy that you forgot how to speak? Poor Feng Sun. He had no idea that he was patting the shoulder of his boss Jun. If he had known, he would never have done such a thing. Jun Linyuan looked at Feng Sun. His eyes were so black that they looked like bottomless lakes, but at the same time, they glinted like sword blades. Feng Sun jumped. He felt as if a sword had just punctured a hole in his chest. Without knowing it, he moved his hand away from Hurt's shoulder and said gingerly, Xiao Wu. But before he could say anything, Jun Linyuan put the contract in his hands. Huh. Feng Sun was confused. Feng Wu said indifferently, Didn't you say that I didn't give you a birthday gift this year? She's yours. Just like that, the Crown Prince handed the trouble over to someone else. Everyone drew in their breaths, including Feng Sun. Seriously? Feng Wu had just. Feng Wu, how dare you? The older prince bellowed. His sister wasn't an object. They couldn't pass her around like that. The Crown Prince would only talk to the people he wanted to. So, he ignored the prince and looked at Feng Sun. Feng Sun scratched his head and looked perplexed. Did I tell you that? I thought I told only Boss Jun about it. How did you know? Feng Wu's stomach sank, and she glared at Jun Linyuan. She didn't expect that he would say such a stupid thing. The Crown Prince almost blushed under her stare. Before he could say anything, Feng Sun found an excuse for him. He stared at Feng Wu. Boss Jun, that wasn't very nice. Feng Wu looked perplexed. Feng Sun said, Why did you tell Xiao Wu about it? Are you that close now? Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Chapter 2075, Romantic Company, 21. Feng Wu didn't know what to say, so she remained silent and kept her face as Jun Linyuan-like as possible. The others read her silence as acquiescence. So, were His Royal Highness and Feng Wu really that close? The older prince of the grassland ran to Feng Wu's side and yelled, Your Royal Highness, although the Sino grassland is a vassal of the Junwo Empire, we still have our dignity. This is outrageous. He tried to make it sound like a conflict between the two forces. Everyone here was in the political circle and was sensitive to such things. Therefore, they immediately saw what the prince was trying to do. Lord Mu interjected, "Your Highness, I have to protest. When Princess Ranmil signed the contract, did she sign it as a princess?" Lord Mu was an experienced politician and got straight to the heart of the matter. If Princess Ranmil really had thought of herself as a princess, then she had brought the humiliation on herself. If she hadn't thought of herself as a princess when she signed her name, then why was the prince bringing it up? Was he trying to stir up something? Those words immediately rendered the older prince speechless. Feng Wu couldn't help but glance at Lord Mu. She hadn't expected Mu Yaoyao's father to be rather capable in that sense. Lord Mu gave Feng Wu an obsequious smile. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Back then, even Mu Yaoyao had been so arrogant toward her, but now, Mu Yaoyao's father was trying to fawn on her. How incredible! The older prince stared at Feng Wu. Even if that's the case, your Royal Highness still didn't show my sister any respect." Feng Wu smiled. "Did I force her to sign it?" The older prince was speechless. Feng Wu said, "Since she signed her name, she's my maid now, and I can give her to whomever I want. Do you have a problem with that?" The older prince didn't know what to say. Feng Wu said, "You should keep me in your prayers. I may give her to the emperor one day. That'll be a treat for your family." The older prince didn't know what to say. Emperor Wu stared at Feng Wu, and his hands shook with anger. What a defiant son. Ranmil looked up, and her eyes were filled with sadness, rage, and humiliation. She had no idea how things had turned out like this. She had made one compromise after another, but in the end, she was completely humiliated. Ranmil only now realized that the crown prince didn't like her at all. Heech had no feelings for her whatsoever. Ranmil couldn't take it anymore. She burst into tears and ran away. Seeing her run away, everyone reacted differently. Some sighed, some felt sympathetic, and some were sorry for her, but most of them looked at Feng Wu in amazement. Of course, they thought that they were looking at Jun Linyuan. Why did they look so impressed? Feng Wu was perplexed. After the banquet was over, Feng Wu asked Jun Linyuan, "Shouldn't people accuse me of doing that to Ranmil? Why was there admiration in their eyes?" Chapter 2076, Romantic Company, 22. Jun Linyuan said, "Of course they admire you." Feng Wu asked why. Jun Linyuan said, "Most men are like that. They like getting a free lunch, but they don't want to hear people say that they were helped by a woman. Therefore, after such an opportunity popped up, they admire me for being able to say no." Feng Wu's eyes twinkled. "But why did you turn her down? She can save you a lot of effort." Jun Linyuan snickered. "Sleeping with someone you don't like is like stepping into a toilet. I can't do it." Feng Wu said, "Hey, your Royal Highness, that's so gross." Jun Linyuan said, "Because it is." Feng Wu said, "Are you saying that Ranmil is gross?" Jun Linyuan said, "Am I wrong?" Feng Wu said, "But they all think that she's gentle, beautiful, and has a pure heart." Jun Linyuan glanced at her. "That's because they're all blind." Feng Wu looked perplexed. The crown prince crossed his hands behind his back and said, "No, it's not that." Feng Wu looked perplexed. He said, "They have no eyes." Feng Wu chuckled and gave Jun Linyuan a little shove. "Hey, you shouldn't say such a thing about a girl." The crown prince glanced at Feng Wu. "Why are you so happy about what I said?" Feng Wu said, "Well?" The crown prince looked her up and down. Feng Wu stared back at him. "What?" Jun Linyuan said, "Feng Wu." Feng Wu said, "Speak." The crown prince suddenly smiled and said, "Exactly how much do you like me? It's impossible to hide it." Feng Wu threw a dirty look at him. "No, I don't like you." The crown prince raised his chin. "I see." Feng Wu stomped her foot and stressed, "I mean it. I don't." The crown prince smiled a little. "All right." Feng Wu said, "Why are you smiling?" The crown prince said, "You look nice when you lie." Feng Wu said, "I'm being serious." Didn't you hear what I said? I don't. The crown prince scratched his ear. Yes, yes, I heard you. You don't like me. Feng Wu said, but you don't seem angry at all. The crown prince asked, why should I be angry? The crown prince had figured it out by now. He believed that the girl would never admit her true feelings. Despite how much she liked him, she always stressed that she didn't like him. However, she had been doing everything to be around him. What a girl! Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Jun Linyuan used to lose his temper whenever she told him that she didn't like him, but why wasn't he like that now? Feng Wu said, all right, that's even better. The crown prince suddenly chuckled. Feng Wu stared at him. Why are you laughing again? The crown prince crossed his hands behind his back and said, I'm not telling you. Feng Wu replied in the same tone, I don't want to know either. The crown prince said, I won't tell you then. Feng Wu stole a glance at Jun Linyuan and wondered if that meant that he actually wanted to tell her. A thought then struck her. The 9th trial. The two of them had to stay within 10 steps of each other for a month. The thought gave Feng Wu a headache. Chapter 2077, Untitled. But to save her beautiful master, no matter how hard it was, she would do it. At that thought, she told Jun Linyuan, let's get back to where we left off before the banquet. Jun Linyuan asked, where was that? Feng Wu said, what do you think about the game? Jun Linyuan chuckled and looked very pleased. What had he just said? Although the girl talked about not liking him all the time, all she ever did was stay close to him. Now, she didn't want to part with him. And she called it a game. Jun Linyuan smiled at Feng Wu and felt over the moon, but he said, no, I don't want to play it. Feng Wu was astonished. While Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan were bantering, things were quite different for the people of the grassland. After Ran Mil burst into tears, she went back to her tent. Qing Chao, her maid, was very worried, but there was nothing she could do. Princess, please don't cry. If the crown prince doesn't want you, it's his loss. He must be blind. Qing Chao was always on her princess's side. How could he humiliate me like that? Ran Mil wept. Princess. I won't have it. I won't. Ran Mil clenched her fists and shouted. Suddenly, Qing Chao fell to the ground. Ran Mil's eyes widened. Qing Chao. A man in a black robe suddenly appeared behind Qing Chao. He stood in the shadows, and a long hood covered most of his face. There was a mask on the part of the face that wasn't covered, and one could only see the smooth skin of his chin. Seeing him, Ran Mil jumped to her feet. Why are you still here? Ran Mil was alarmed by the man. He just stood there and stared at Ran Mil. He didn't say a word, but the energy he gave off made one shudder. If Feng Wu were here, she would be alarmed as well. Because this man was no less intimidating than Jun Linyuan. Apparently, Ran Mil already knew this man. You failed. The man stated the truth. Ran Mil snapped, no, I haven't. It's not finished yet. I didn't fail. I didn't. The man smirked. Ran Mil stared at him. Do you think that I've failed? The man said, you humiliated yourself at the banquet. Ran Mil stared at him. The man snorted. I didn't teach you that dance so that you could do such a thing. Ran Mil gritted her teeth. The man said, you took the bet. It's time to admit your defeats. Ran Mil gritted her teeth. Please give me another chance. The man shook his head. You won't succeed. Ran Mil dropped to her knees. Please give me another chance. The man didn't say a word. Ran Mil insisted, please. Please give me one last chance. If I fail again, I'll give up Jun Linyuan. I'll do anything you want. Please. Chapter 2078, Untitled. The man in the black robe glanced at Ran Mil. Do you mean it? Ran Mil said, I've sold my soul to you. Otherwise, you wouldn't have taught me fierce face, right? She raised her head and gritted her teeth. You can take my life at any moment. Am I wrong? The man stared at Ran Mil and gave her a sympathetic look. He then shook his head and said, remember what you said. He disappeared right after that. Ran Mil was glad to see him leave. She sat on the ground and let out a breath of relief. Her forehead was covered in cold sweat. She was the only one who knew how terrifying that man was. Qing Chao woke up, rubbing the back of her head. Did I fall asleep? She knelt down and asked for Ran Mil's forgiveness. Your Highness, I'm at fault. Ran Mil waved her off. Qing Chao immediately rose to her feet and helped Ran Mil stand up. All Ran Mil could think of now was Jun Linyuan. She only had one last shot. If she failed, she would lose Jun Linyuan forever. After that, she would have to watch Jun Linyuan marry another woman, and couldn't do anything about it. At that thought, Ran Mil clenched her fists and gritted her teeth. Princess, what's wrong? Qing Chao was worried when she saw Ran Mil's dark face. Ran Mil stared at Qing Chao, and the look reminded her of a serpent. Qing Cao's stomach lurched. Qing Chao, have I been kind to you? Ran Mil suddenly grabbed Qing Cao's hands, and there was a frantic look in her eyes. Frightened, Qing Chao could only nod. Yes, of course. I've never harmed you, have I? No, of course not. Your Highness is the best princess. But she was scared. Then do something for me. Ran Mil held Qing Cao's hands so tightly that blue veins popped on the back of her own hands. What thing? Qing Chao felt that something was wrong with her master. The madness in her eyes made it look like she was going to explode. Ran Mil suddenly let go of Qing Chao and rose to her feet. It was her last chance. If she failed, her life would change forever. You need to think of a way to get Feng Wu to stay away from the Crown Prince for 5 minutes, said Ran Mil. My happiness depends on it. Was it so serious? Qing Chao was nervous. They're leaving tomorrow, so today is my last chance. Go. Ran Mil seemed to calm down, and gestured at Qing Chao to get on with the matter. Qing Chao wanted to say something, but when she saw the decisive look in Ran Mil's eyes, she said, Yes, I'll do my best. There was a reason Qing Chao had been with Ran Mil for so many years. Chapter 2079, Untitled. Yes, Qing Chao was loyal, but she was also smart and friendly. When she came to a new place, it was very easy for her to get along with other people. As a matter of fact, ever since Ran Mil entered the tombs, Qing Chao had been trying to make friends with Jun Linyuan's servants. She couldn't get close to Granny Gong, but Bei, who worked under Granny Gong, had become Qing Cao's friend. Therefore, Qing Chao went to see her. Bei sighed and said, Qing Chao, Miss Feng Wu has been staying with His Royal Highness since they came back from the banquet. It's very hard to get her to come out. Qing Chao stuffed a stack of silver drafts in Bei's hands and smiled. It's really urgent. I won't take up too much of Miss Feng Wu's time. Please help me. After a pause, she added, I'll owe you one, even if Miss Feng Wu won't see me. Bei sighed. Fine, I'll ask her for you. But don't blame me if she won't come out. Qing Chao smiled and said, Of course. Therefore, when Bei brought Feng Wu some fruit, she walked up to her and said, Miss Wu, Qing Chao has been outside for a while. She wants to see you. Needless to say, Feng Wu was actually the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince glanced at Bei. Bei felt her stomach freeze. She stumbled back and regretted delivering the message. Had Feng Wu been around His Royal Highness for too long? Why was the look in her eyes as frightening as the Crown Prince's? Feng Wu was sitting next to Jun Linyuan, and she heard Bei as well, so she asked curiously, Who's Qing Chao? Huh. Bei looked at Feng Wu in confusion. His Royal Highness had always been cold and aloof. Why would he be interested in such a petty thing? But since His Royal Highness had asked, Bei had to answer. She lowered her gaze and said gingerly, Your Royal Highness, Qing Chao is Princess Ran Mil's maid. Princess Ran Mil? Feng Wu was intrigued. Has she not given up yet? Feng Wu murmured. Is this a final attempt? Jun Linyuan glanced at her. Don't look for trouble. Feng Wu snorted. She wanted to know what Ran Mil was up to. Her instincts told her that given what Ran Mil was like, this last attempt would be something big. But Jun Linyuan didn't seem interested at all, so Feng Wu waved at Bei. Leave us. Bei knew that both the Crown Prince and Miss Feng Wuth were rejecting it. She quickly left the room. Qing Chao waited anxiously. When she saw Ran Mil, who was hiding in a corner, she was even more anxious. Seeing Bei coming out, Qing Chao quickly walked up to her. "How did it go?" Bei patted her chest and threw a dirty look at Qing Chao. "What do you think? You almost got me killed." Qing Cao's stomach sank. "What?" Bei looked around before she led Qing Chao to a quiet corner. Chapter 2080, Untitled. That quiet corner was only 5 meters away from where Ran Mil was hiding. Bei let out a long breath and stared at Qing Chao. "It's not that I don't want to help you, but I can't. Please leave." She then gave the silver drafts back to Qing Chao. "I can't accept this. I haven't done anything for you. Please take it back." She left after that, after making sure that there was no one around. "Wait." Ran Mil suddenly ran out of her hiding place. "Huh." Caught off guard, Bei jumped and stared at Ran Mil nervously. Why was the princess here? Bei looked at Qing Chao in bewilderment. Before Qing Chao could say anything, Ran Mil ran to Bei's side, took her hand, and asked anxiously, "Tell me, did His Royal Highness not want to see me, or did Feng Wu stop him from doing so?" Ran Mil simply wouldn't take no for an answer. The Crown Prince might now have an interest in her. He couldn't have remained indifferent to the enchanting body. After recalling what happened just now, she hesitated. "Tell me, did Feng Wu stop His Royal Highness from seeing me? Speak." Bei thought that Ran Mil was going to choke her. Qing Chao stopped Ran Mil in a hurry. "Princess, please calm down." Scared, Bei had to describe what she thought she had seen. Miss Feng Wu wasn't happy about it. His Royal Highness seemed intrigued, but Miss Feng Wu threatened him, so. "I knew it. It was Feng Wu. I knew it. His Royal Highness would never have turned me down." Ran Mil was furious. Had it not been for Feng Wu, His Royal Highness would have said yes. "Princess," Qing Chao was frightened by Ran Mil. So was Bei. What would this frantic Ran Mil do? Would she kill them? However, to Bei's surprise, Ran Mil turned to leave. Just like that? Bei was perplexed. Qing Chao gave Bei an apologetic look and quickly followed Ran Mil. Ran Mil sat down at her desk after she went back to her tent. She closed her eyes and seemed to be considering something. No one could tell what she was thinking about. Suddenly, she raised her hand. Seeing this, Qing Chao immediately prepared some ink for her. Once the ink, paper, and pen were ready, Ran Mil opened her eyes. There was no warmth in her eyes. She looked like she was someone who had nothing to lose. She picked up the pen and wrote a letter without any pause. Qing Chao paled when she saw what the letter was about. She wanted to say something, but went silent when she saw the look on the princess's face. But she had broken into a cold sweat. Her princess was taking a bit of a risk. The ink hadn't dried when Ran Mil picked up the letter. She carefully blew the ink dry before handing it to Qing Chao. "Give this letter to His Royal Highness." "Princess," Qing Chao knelt down and pleaded. "Princess, please stop. There will be more excellent young men in the future." Chapter 2081, Untitled. However, Ran Mil said decisively, "If I can't marry Jun Linyuan, I'd rather die. Go now." No matter what Qing Chao said, Ran Mil wouldn't change her mind. Finally, Qing Chao had no choice but to take the letter. "Princess, there's no turning back when I leave with this letter." "Just go," said Ran Mil coldly. Qing Chao was filled with despair, but since her princess had made up her mind, she had to follow her order. She took a breath and stepped out of the door. "Come back," Ran Mil suddenly said. Qing Chao was delighted and quickly ran back to her. While she thought that her princess was going to change her mind, Ran Mil only took back the letter, unfolded it, and put a red leaf inside. "It's a red heart leaf. Make sure that His Royal Highness gets it," Ran Mil stressed. Qing Chao didn't let her emotions show and only said, "Yes." Outside Jun Linyuan's tent. Bei was on duty tonight, so she couldn't leave. However, when she saw Qing Chao again, she almost walked away. Bei, Qingqiao smiled. Go away, Bei gestured at her to go away. Qingqiao walked up to her with a smile. Don't worry. I won't trouble you. But Bei didn't believe her. You should go away. Otherwise, I'll have you removed. Qingqiao smiled. You'll be in trouble if you disturb the crown prince. Bei said, Fu. Qingqiao smiled. Don't worry. I won't tell Granny Gong that you took a lot of money from me and told me information about His Royal Highness. You. Bei glared at Qingqiao. Qingqiao smiled. Bei lowered her voice. Are you threatening me? Qingqiao said, Sister Bei, I'm only asking you for a little favor. It won't cost you anything, nor will it threaten your safety. What on earth do you want? Bei grew impatient. Qingqiao laughed inwardly. She said, You said it yourself just now. His Royal Highness was intrigued and only said no because Miss Feng Wu stopped him. So, Qingqiao took the letter out of her sleeve. Just take this letter to His Royal Highness. Bei wanted to say something, but Qingqiao went on. What His Royal Highness wants to do after that will be his choice, and you'll be off the hook. Bei took the letter and hesitated. Although the crown prince usually stayed out of household affairs, he wouldn't allow such things. Qingqiao said, If I'm guessing correctly, in 5 minutes, you'll change shifts with Xiang Cao, right? She was trying to hurry her up. Bei gritted her teeth. I just need to give His Royal Highness this letter and nothing more? Qingqiao said, Yes. Bei said, Do you mean it? Qingqiao said, Of course. Bei couldn't run into the tent just like this. If the crown prince was offended, she might be killed. Chapter 2082, Untitled. But Bei became more hopeful. Was it possible that His Royal Highness actually liked Princess Ranmil? Bei went in with 2 cups of hot tea. When she walked past His Royal Highness, she swayed a little and dropped the letter that was in her sleeve. The envelope had Jun Linyuan's name on it. Feng Wu looked from Bei to the letter. Bei squatted down and tried to grab the letter. Your Royal Highness, please forgive me. Feng Wu gave her a half-smile. But what did you do? What? Bei was perplexed. Wasn't the crown prince supposed to be indifferent and didn't care about anything? What? Bei tensed up and said gingerly, Your Royal Highness, the letter is from Qingqiao. She's Princess Ranmil's maid. She stuffed it in my sleeve. I tried to turn her down, but she put it in my sleeve when I wasn't looking. It's all my fault. Please forgive me. Feng Wu looked at the maid and knew that she was full of lies. She was a good actress, but she had seen all kinds of good actors in her previous life, and Bei was only an amateur in comparison. Hand it over. Feng Wu reached out her hand. She was just curious what Ranmil would do as a last resort. If she ignored Ranmil, that girl would keep trying something new. Feng Wu would rather learn her purpose now. Bei handed the latter to the crown prince. She secretly rejoiced, wondering if His Royal Highness actually liked Ranmil. What's that? Jun Linyuan had been reading. Seeing this, he walked over to Feng Wu and sat down next to her. Feng Wu was opening the letter. It's a letter from Ranmil. She looked up at Jun Linyuan. Jun Linyuan frowned. Feng Wu said, Don't be mad. I'm just reading it. It's not like I'm going to do anything. Jun Linyuan glanced at Feng Wu and didn't seem pleased. Bei's heart raced when she saw their interaction. She held her breath, but she thought she had discovered the truth. She believed that His Royal Highness was really interested in Ranmil, but Feng Wu was interfering. Miss Feng Wu had crossed the line. Bei clenched her fists. Leave us. Feng Wu glanced at Bei. The girl's thoughts were written all over her face. Yes. Bei bowed and left the tent. Back in the tent. What's this? Seeing the red leaf in the letter, Feng Wu was curious, so she gave it to Jun Linyuan. Jun Linyuan hadn't seen it before either. Feng Wu was even more curious. Even you don't know what it is? The crown prince said, Why should I know? Feng Wu said, Because you're Jun Linyuan. Jun Linyuan murmured, But even Jun Linyuan doesn't know what you're thinking. His tone was quite aggrieved when he said this, and his voice was so low that Feng Wu didn't hear him. What was that? Feng Wu asked. Jun Linyuan only glanced at her. Amused, Feng Wu called his name. Jun Linyuan. The crown prince looked at Feng Wu. Feng Wu's eyes twinkled. My princess. Chapter 2084, Out in the Open, 2. Luckily, I'm also a girl, so it doesn't really affect me. The only effect is to quicken my heartbeat. That's all. Hearing this, Jun Linyuan asked, Are you sure you're all right? Feng Wu waved her hands. I just feel a little hot. Luckily, your body is strong enough, so this poison doesn't work on me. Something seemed to occur to Jun Linyuan, and he looked at Feng Wu without saying a word. That made Feng Wu fidget. Why are you looking at me like this? Jun Linyuan looked at Feng Wu's hands before looking away. Feng Wu found that look on his face strange. So she pressed, Hey, tell me what's wrong. You're giving me the creeps. What's the problem? Don't blame me if something happens to your body. Jun Linyuan's face darkened when he heard Feng Wu's reminder. Go. Wash your hands. He stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu asked, What? I didn't touch anything dirty. Why? Before she could finish, Jun Linyuan pulled her away. They were headed for a creek on the east. Feng Wu didn't notice, but when Jun Linyuan pulled her away, the red leaf dropped to the ground. Jun Linyuan. What Jun Linyuan said next shocked her. That's the scent of an enchanting body. Don't you know what part of her body it comes from? Jun Linyuan stared at Feng Wu's hands. You just touched that thing with my hands. Are you stupid? Jun Linyuan wanted to sever Feng Wu's hands with his eyes. Feng Wu suddenly paled before she blushed. Holy crap. Are you saying that? Damn that Ranmil. I'm gonna kill her. Jun Linyuan pushed Feng Wu toward the creek. Wash your hands. Even if he didn't tell her, Feng Wu would still wash her hands. She wished that she could chop them off. She felt like screaming. She had touched Ranmil's body fluid. That woman was nuts. Ranmil had no idea that Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan were both furious. Right now, she was walking in the woods. Princess, Qing Chao looked concerned. Ranmil stared at her. Are you sure that His Royal Highness received the letter himself? Qing Chao nodded. Ranmil said, Are you sure that His Royal Highness touched the leaf? Qing Chao nodded again. Ranmil smirked. Jun Linyuan, I don't care if you like me or not. From now on you're mine. Princess, shall I lure His Royal Highness here? Since they had done it, Qing Chao decided to help Ranmil to the end. The smell of that leaf will lure him here. Ranmil was very confident. I need to prepare now. Go back to your own business. Qing Chao nodded. Yes. After Qing Chao left, Ranmil changed into a see-through dress made of thin gauze. It showed a lot of skin. Chapter 2085, Out in the Open, 3. Ranmil had a great body. She was curvaceous with a tiny waist and long legs. She was hot enough to give any man a nosebleed. Moreover, she had an enchanting body. Jun Linyuan, it's about time you show up. Ranmil smirked and began to dance the last part of Fierce Face, which was very seductive. No man could resist the temptation. At the same time, in Emperor Wu's tent, the Emperor and Empress sat side by side on the bed. Empress Dugu took Emperor Wu's hand and spoke in a piteous voice. Your Majesty, I meant everything I just said. I genuinely feel sorry for Princess Ranmil. Emperor Wu shook his head in resignation. Empress Dugu said, His Royal Highness was being very inconsiderate. In that situation, even if he had to reject her, he should have been more tactful. That way, he won't affect the relationship between the Empire and the grassland. Emperor Wu nodded. Seeing that Emperor Wu agreed with her, Empress Dugu went on. But His Royal Highness simply said no, which must have humiliated the princess. How will the chieftain feel about this? The crown prince might have made us a new enemy. Emperor Wu didn't object, which was a sign that he thought the same. Empress Dugu knew that she couldn't keep blaming the crown prince, for overdoing it would only counter what she was trying to achieve. She had to seem objective, so she changed the subject. She sighed and said, "Of course, the Junmo Empire is so powerful that the grassland will never pose any threat to us. The Crown Prince has been proud since he was little. It'll be very hard to change him. It's just that. Poor Princess Ranmil. She's just a teenage girl. It's only natural that she would fall in love with a capable teenager. That was a very brave thing to do, confessing her love in front of everyone. There's nothing wrong with that." Empress Dugu said sympathetically, but His Royal Highness really crossed the line this time. His outright rejection must have hurt the princess. Emperor Wu's face darkened. Empress Dugu then said, "The princess won't try to hurt herself, will she?" Emperor Wu frowned. "Don't you think that's a bit of an exaggeration?" Empress Dugu immediately knelt on the ground. "Your Majesty, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have said such things." Emperor Wu emptied his glass and waved her off. "You're not wrong. What Jun Linyuan did was outrageous." Empress Dugu immediately said, "Maybe His Royal Highness isn't as heartless as he seems. He probably did what he did to please Miss Feng Wu." To please Feng Wu? Has he lost his mind? He's the Crown Prince. Why should he please that girl? She's nobody. Emperor Wu's face turned livid. Why was he angry? Because that was what worried him the most. He didn't want to see the extraordinary boy become lost in his love for a girl. What an awful idea. At that thought, Emperor Wu rose to his feet. "Your Majesty, it's in the middle of the night." Empress Dugu tried to stop Emperor Wu. Emperor Wu snorted. "I need to teach him a lesson before he forgets who he is." Chapter 2086, Out in the Open 4. After that, Emperor Wu walked away. His servant quickly lifted the door curtain for him. Seeing Emperor Wu leave, Empress Dugu smirked. She would make sure that the father and son didn't see eye to eye. After Emperor Wu left, another person entered the tent. There was the sound of someone clapping. Empress Dugu knew who it was before she turned around. "That was amazing, mother. You set father off with a few simple words. He's off to scold Jun Linyuan, and they'll get into a row again," said the second prince in a pleased tone. "Their relationship will keep worsening until they become real enemies." Empress Dugu looked affectionately at her son. "And the throne will be yours." The second prince nodded. He then said in a pleading tone, "Mother, I want to marry Ranmil." Empress Dugu frowned. The second prince went on. "Mother, what do you think I should look for in a wife?" Empress Dugu said, "The power of her maternal family." The second prince shook his head. "That's important, but not the most important thing. Look at Jun Linyuan. He doesn't have that sort of power at all." Empress Dugu had nothing to say to that. The second prince said, "Mother, the most important thing is her capability. With Jun Linyuan's capability, he can do whatever he wants. He has always ignored me." Empress Dugu felt sorry for her son. The second prince gritted his teeth. "He won't dare to ignore me if I'm a powerful man. Mother, no matter how many powerful friends I have, the power is still theirs. I need to have power of my own. Ranmil knows the fierce face dance and has an enchanting body," the second prince said excitedly. "After marrying her, I'll become so much more powerful." Empress Dugu asked, "Are you sure of that?" "Mother, I haven't made much progress mainly because I love women and I'm too lazy. But once I have Ranmil, things will be different. I can make progress lying down." "Mother, that's the most suitable way for me. There's only one Ranmil in the whole continent. I have to have her," the second prince pleaded. "Didn't you hear her? She's in love with Jun Linyuan," said Empress Dugu. "Mother, a woman will settle down after she's married. Once she's my wife, she'll have to obey me. If she so much as glances at Jun Linyuan, I'll break her legs." Empress Dugu didn't like the idea, but if the second prince's capability really could improve. "All right, I'll help you." Empress Dugu was then lost in thought as she tried to think of a way to marry Ranmil to her son. The cool wind outside cleared Emperor Wu's head. Should he go to Jun Linyuan and scold him? He shook his head. That defiant son wouldn't just stand there and listen to him. If scolding him worked, that boy wouldn't have become so unruly. But he had stormed out of the tent. Chapter 2087. Out in the Open, 5. Wang, the eunuch who had come out with him, was good at reading his master's mind. He saw that Emperor Wu was in an awkward situation, so he said, "Your Majesty, it's a beautiful night." Emperor Wu looked up and saw the bright moon and twinkling stars. It wasn't cold, the wind felt cool on his skin. Let's take a walk in the mountains. Emperor Wu suddenly became interested, and he headed for the mountain up ahead. Wang followed him. Stay here. Don't follow me. Emperor Wu told his guards. Too many people would only annoy him. Hence, only Wang followed him. The walk indeed took the edge off his annoyance. What's that smell? Emperor Wu caught a strange fragrance when he was ready to return to the camp. Because he had been drinking, he was especially sensitive to the smell. Hearing that, Wang also sniffed. But he was confused. Your Majesty, I don't smell anything. That's not possible. The alcohol had mostly worn off, and Emperor Wu said stubbornly, I can smell it. It's a very nice smell. It's here. No, it's there. Emperor Wu looked around, and his gaze landed on a red leaf by his feet. Wang immediately picked it up and handed it to Emperor Wu. Your Majesty, is this what you're looking for? Emperor Wu picked it up and took a big sniff of it. Just, what a strange smell. Suddenly, Emperor Wu was aroused. Your Majesty. Wang wanted to say something, but the emperor suddenly turned right and headed for the maple woods. Of course, Wang couldn't let him go alone. Emperor Wu listened and seemed to pick up a special tune. It was sometimes smooth and sometimes quick. Then it became rather seductive. For some unknown reason, Emperor Wu's breathing quickened and his eyes turned red. He couldn't look away when he saw the dancing figure in the woods. Was that a fairy in the woods? Why was she so attractive? Emperor Wu seemed to be in a trance-like state, and his mind had gone blank. When he finally saw her face, his senses seemed to return to him for a brief moment. It was Ran Mil. Emperor Wu immediately turned away. This was inappropriate. Ran Mil liked Jun Linyuan and was going to be his future daughter-in-law, but now he was watching her when she was half naked. In fact, Ran Mil had noticed that a man was around. However, the person was hiding behind a bush, and she could only see his eyes. To seduce Jun Linyuan, Ran Mil had drunk a whole bottle of potent aphrodisiac. That was the only way for Fierce Face to display its maximum effect. She had to seduce Jun Linyuan. It was a now or never thing. Ran Mil's head was clouded, and she had begun to stumble. As she danced, she gradually approached the bush. Chapter 2088. Out in the Open, 6. The woods were dim in the moonlight. Because Emperor Wu wore his casual robe and had his back to Ran Mil, he resembled Jun Linyuan a lot. Ran Mil was exhilarated. There was a frantic look in her eyes. Without thinking, Ran Mil put her arms around Emperor Wu's waist from behind, pressed herself to his back, and breathed on his ear. Boom! Immediately, Emperor Wu lost control, and his head went blank. Ran Mil was under the influence of the aphrodisiac, while Emperor Wu had stopped thinking altogether. With the girl's seduction, they abandoned all moral concerns and fell together on the ground. The moon seemed to feel abashed, and hid behind the clouds. Their heavy panting filled the air. Wang slowly backed away. Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan had no idea what was going on in the woods. Right now, they were sitting by the creek. Feng Wu was rubbing her hands as hard as she could. She had almost rubbed her fingers raw. She sighed. Luckily, they're not my hands. Otherwise, I'd be crying so hard. The crown prince's face darkened. I've washed them 10 times. Isn't that enough? Feng Wu asked. Again. Jun Linyuan stared at Feng Wu and said sternly. Left with no other choice, Feng Wu had to wash her hands again. 15 times already. Again. Feng Wu was speechless. This guy was so inconsiderate. She glanced at Jun Linyuan and complained, "You were laughing at me at first because you didn't realize that this was your body, right?" Jun Linyuan stared at Feng Wu. "You don't need to talk while washing your hands." Feng Wu made a face. By the time she washed her hands 20 times, they were red and swollen. She stopped and said, "My skin is peeling. I guess that's enough to wash any dirt away." Jun Linyuan snorted and tossed a dagger to Feng Wu. Feng Wu looked at him in confusion. "Do you know how to kill a person?" Jun Linyuan asked arrogantly. "Kill a person? Ranmil?" Feng Wu asked. Jun Linyuan smirked and turned to leave. Feng Wu ran after him and asked, "Hey, Jun Linyuan, do you mean it? Are you going to kill her just because of that disgusting red leaf?" Jun Linyuan's face was very dark, and he was obviously in a bad mood. Feng Wu said, "Yes, what Ranmil did was outrageous, but that was probably because she thought it would work on you." Jun Linyuan found her suggestion idiotic. "Are you saying that I'm stupid?" Feng Wu said, "Of course not. You're much cleverer than that." Jun Linyuan wanted to grab her arm, but Feng Wu ran off before he could catch her. However, given what Jun Linyuan had just said, she knew that it was only a matter of time before he had Ranmil killed. "Wait, what's that sound?" Feng Wu suddenly stopped Jun Linyuan and pricked up her ears. Since Feng Wu was using Jun Linyuan's body now, her eyes and ears were much sharper. Nothing could escape her hearing. Jun Linyuan frowned at her. "Your body is too weak." He couldn't hear a thing. Feng Wu cleared her throat and led Jun Linyuan away. "You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.